Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this week's video, we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about pre-sales and whether they still make for good, worthy investments or whether they're too risky. We're also going to talk about what's happening with the market from a feet on the street perspective, very different than what we've seen over the last few years. Real quick before we get started, if this is your first time to the channel, my name is Hasan. I'm a real estate agent in the Vancouver area, and I make educational real estate content to help you on your real estate journey. When I'm not making videos like this, I'm helping people just like you buy and sell real estate across the Lower Mainland. If that sounds interesting to you or you just want to chat about your real estate situation with me, you can book me for a free call in the Calendly link below and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a future video. Right, so we're going to hop right into it. I'm going to start with the pre-sales and then I'm going to jump into what's going on in the market right now. The reason I want to talk about pre-sales, I've had a lot of inquiries over the last month and a half, 2 months from potential purchasers of pre-sales asking, are things too risky in today's environment? And if you're not really following what's happening with pre-sales and constructions in the Vancouver area, we're seeing a lot of projects never get off the ground. So buyers will come in, they'll put their deposits down, and these projects actually do not come to fruition because the developers can't get their financing to actually finance this project and move things forward. Now, in order to explain, whether this makes for a worthy investment and what the risk level is, I'm going to just explain how that process looks. So, you walk into a pre-sale center, hopefully you're bringing your agent with you, and you should every time because your agent is going to be the one who has your best interest in mind. So you walk into the pre-sale center, you pick out your unit, you pay your deposit, and very often that deposit is a staggered deposit over a year. Lately, we're seeing staggered deposits over 2 years even. So there's all these different deposit structures, but what you need to know is you walk in, you pay your deposit, and you have 7 days as a rescission period to decide whether you want to walk away or whether you're going to move forward on this project. So assume you move forward. When you move forward and while you're reviewing for those 7 days, you're given a disclosure statement. And in that disclosure statement has all of the blood and guts of what that project is going to look like. It's not necessarily going to look like what you see in the sales center. It is exactly what's within this document and structured, written within there. It's going to talk about construction financing on the lender's behalf. Now, fairly rarely you might see a project that is self-financed where they're not needing to get construction financing for it. Not very common to see. And the other quotient that you'll see in there is when the developer needs financing, that they have the ability, if they don't hit a certain amount of units by 1 year from when they file that disclosure statement, that they can send out notices and the project is not moving forward. And so that threshold in terms of pre-sales, sales that need to be met, it varies depending on the developer, depending on the project itself and the lender, but it's generally 60% plus. They need to hit that minimum threshold. So the reason that a lot of people were, bringing up, does it still make sense to purchase pre-sales? Everywhere I turn, I'm seeing that, developers are not hitting their minimum threshold. They're sending out letters saying we can't move forward with the project. Now, a couple of things. What a lot of people don't realize is within that disclosure statement, yes, the developer has several outs to get out of that contract, but you as a buyer also have some outs as well. For instance, if they don't hit their financing metric at that 1 year mark. So I think the way to gear, does it make sense to move forward on a pre-sale is to really truly understand the worst case scenario, this risk, if the developer doesn't hit their financing threshold a year later. So again, you're paying your deposit. It's staggered. It's usually anywhere from 10 to 20% depending on the project. And again, it's staggered out. And some of them are staggering out now, like I said, to over 2 years. So if at the year mark you've paid, say 10%, maybe 15% of a deposit, and you learn that this project is not going to move forward, you get your deposit back. Whether you get it back with interest or not, that's going to be dictated by that disclosure statement. But really, how bad of a scenario are you in if at that year mark you have your cash again? And in a rising market, so this is where things get a little bit dicey, is when you're in a fast rising market, which often happens here in Vancouver. Your deposit money on the day that you pay it, it's not worth the same amount of money at the end of the year, right? Because prices go up, you get your deposit money back, and all of a sudden, you're priced out of certain projects, certain areas, because properties have just inflated in price so much. In more steadier markets, which we're in right now, you're not likely to see that price progression happen so quickly over a year. Again, you're not putting in that full amount of a deposit. So in order to determine, okay, like, does it make sense to take on that risk, which I don't see as extremely high? It really comes down to, what is the reward? What sort of a price am I getting on this pre-sale unit? Is this really good value? And if I was shopping around for pre-sales right now as a buyer, I'd be looking for the best value purchases. You don't, unless you're going to move into it yourself, it's going to be, a 7 to 10 year home for yourself. You don't need to fall in love with the shiny bells and whistles. You want to try and really focus on what sort of price am I getting for this pre-sale, and then understanding that risk. Worst case scenario, if this project doesn't happen, what's the worst thing that's going to happen with my money? I get it back, I can put it into something else. What are my outs as a buyer? I can't fully speak to that in this video because every disclosure statement is going to have, a different set of outs. For example, if they make a material change to your unit during this process, you often would have the ability to walk away at that point as well, get your deposit back and move on to something else. So it will be based on what's within that disclosure statement. And that's why it's even more important to make sure you're working with a realtor on your behalf that's actually reading that disclosure statement. You'd be surprised. There's agents out there that they'll just forward this along, or they won't even open the email. And this is like I said, the blood and guts of the whole project is within this disclosure statement. It's not what you see in the pre-sale centers. So always, in everything in life, it's a risk versus reward scenario. What's the reward, and is the reward great enough? Am I getting good enough value on this pre-sale to assume that risk? And we can't assume that every developer is not going to achieve their financing. That's certainly not the case, but the only ones that we hear about are the ones that don't. So we hear that in the news. I talk about it quite a bit, the importance of working with a reputable developer. They tend to be able to weather storms more efficiently in the market, financial storms, if you will. It's going to be interesting to see what happens now over the next year, though, because as many of us are expecting rates to come down a little bit, it's still not an excellent market for developers to be building. There's not a lot of developers that are seeking land right now to try and fast track any sort of projects. That's not really the market we're in, and I've talked long and hard about what that's going to mean for long-term supply. But when we're talking about pre-sales, it's not the biggest risk in the world. And the other thing we have to think about with the deposit, at least in my world, with the clients that I'm working with that purchase pre-sale, for the most part, they don't generally have an immediate plan for that deposit money anyways. What I mean by that is the clients aren't coming to me saying, okay, I want to buy a pre-sale, but if I don't put my deposit down on this, I'm taking that money, I'm going to put it into NVIDIA, like whatever it might be. They're not thinking like that. Oftentimes that money is sitting in a savings account. It's collecting nominal interest, very low level of interest, not really doing much for them sitting in that bank account. And that's the other thing you want to think about too, is if I'm going to buy this pre-sale, and specifically if you're going to do it for an investment, what else could I do with my money? What else could I do with this deposit money? Over the long term, if it's a long-term play for you, is this going to make more sense for me? If it's a short-term thing, is this going to make more sense? So there are moving pieces. It's not just about, canceled projects, this is a horrible situation. Of course, there are things we can look at with the developer, their track record, their history, within the disclosure statement as well, to understand, is this going to be a project that's going to successfully sell? Are they going to hit their minimums? And that's, again, something a realtor can look into, who understands the market and understands values, and we can get a good gauge that, hey, this is a sellable project or this is not. I have people come to me who are not even purchasing or thinking of purchasing just individual units in a project, but they come to me because the developer has come to them saying, should should we invest in this project in the entire construction of it? So they'll often come to me and they'll say, can you take a look at this project, potential project, and is this sellable? And I'll look at the price per square foot, I'll look at construction costs today, I'll look at that specific market, and then I'll give my thesis on why I think this is something that they should put money into or they should not. So there's all these kind of moving pieces with pre-sale. You can't blanket it. You have to look at it on a project basis and work with a good realtor who's looking out for your best interests and understands that pre-sale market. All right, so I want to switch gears now. I want to talk about what's happening in the real estate market right now. I mentioned off the top, it's not like anything we've seen over the last few years. It's a very, very different spring market. As I'm recording this, we're heading towards the end of June. We're still in spring market. July, August, as we head into summer, typically very slow months in real estate, quite snooze fest, if you will. And I expect that, especially as soon as the weather turns, there's going to be a lot of people that have been waiting for some summer weather, or at least a stretch of summer weather. So I think July and August is going to be very slow. What's happening right now in the market? It's been quite a slow spring market as well. We've had the inventory continue to increase, especially in the condo space, the higher price condos, the condos that just completed, the buildings that just completed over the last 3 or 4 months. A lot of those units have hit the market, hitting the market at higher prices. There's a lot of price discovery happening right now. It's really hit or miss when you list a property. Are you going to get multiple offers? Are you going to sit there on the market? Are you going to have to do a price reduction? Extremely hit or miss. I can give you an example of properties that we're looking at. There was a condo here in New West listed at $799 for a 2-bedroom condo, and is listed at that price for quite some time. Weren't quite getting the action on it. Probably priced high even for a hotter market, and without getting the traction that they're looking for, they just reduced down to $599, so dropping the price $200,000 for a 2-bedroom condo in an effort to get multiple offers. We're seeing a lot of price discovery where people are starting at that higher price. There's another 2-bedroom, 2-bath asking $850. For the longest time, they couldn't quite get the offers they're looking for. I don't even think they actually got an offer at that price. Then they go to $799 to try and get multiple offers. Did not receive an offer. Now they're looking at maybe reducing as well. So it's a slippery slope in areas where inventory is picked up, again in the condo space, and I would say in the higher priced condo space especially, and it's market dependent too, right? If you look at downtown Vancouver, not a lot is moving, a lot of inventory. You look at Brentwood, a lot of inventory. Now, a lot of people might think there must be so many deals to be had. There's all this inventory on the market, but realistically, that actually hasn't shown to be the case. And I'm going to take Brentwood, for example. You have buyers that purchase these Brentwood condos at, very high prices, and they've completed on it. Not all of them are desperate enough to take a loss. Generally, what happens now is even if the plan was to complete on this property and rent it out for a period of time, the way the provincial government has handled the rental laws and the stipulations and the regulations they place on landlords here, really trying to kick landlords while they're down. The new plan now is to put these units on the market, and the reality is that not everyone's going to take a loss. So they put it on the market, they give it 3 months, 4 months, it's a vacant property, they're trying to sell it. Yeah, maybe they'll take, $25,000, $50,000 loss if they really had to do it. But for the most part, that plan C is going to be to rent it out regardless. So they're going to begrudgingly, put that unit into the rental market in 3 or 4 months. So, it is a little bit of like picking through all of the inventory to see who's an actual motivated seller. It's somewhat a paradox of choice in certain areas. There's so many listings kind of staring at you, very similar type, and it's up to the agent to kind of go through it, work through it, and say, okay, who really wants to sell here, and what's their threshold? I think a lot of clients, they see a bunch of listings, or they see a seller, for example, has a property listed for months and months, and they're looking at that. They're saying, oh, that guy must be really, really motivated now. They've been sitting there for 3 months, not a lot of traction, no price reductions. they really must want to sell. And very oftentimes the answer is the opposite. They are holding out for their price, and if they don't get that price, they're just going to rent it out. So the reality is it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with all of this inventory. On the buyer side, what I'm seeing, and this is in my own listings as well, is lots of showings, lots of showing requests, very busy open houses. When it comes to putting pen to paper, writing the offer, not a high level of motivation for a lot of buyers. Now we're heading into a summer in July where it's likely we're going to see another rate cut. And if that's as expected, a 0.25% cut, it's not going to move the market per se. I could see some movement happening in September when everyone's back from summer. Fixed rates have already started to come down as well. So those that are, renewing their mortgages right now, I would say it's some relief, but a lot of these mortgages are on extremely low rates in the 1s and the 2s. So it's not really a lot of relief, but from where we were 6 months ago, it is. I think September gets a little bit busier. I think maybe a bit more urgency from buyers. When I talk to my mortgage partners, a lot of them are processing more pre-approvals now. So generally they'll get a little bit busier than some of us agents will because they're in advance processing these pre-approvals. Or oftentimes clients will come to me through this channel even say, look, I haven't quite figured out my finances, whether I can even make this work. And then I will put you or they in touch with my mortgage partners, and they can determine affordability and take it down that road. But I think September picks up a little bit, but right now very snoozy. It's almost like the summer market in spring. Not a ton of action happening. When we look at entry level detached homes and townhomes in some areas as well, that stuff is still moving quite quickly. Sellers markets, if you will, are condos and townhomes when it comes to a sales to active ratio. But on the condo side, it's really the value buys. It's the entry level prices. It's the lower price product that I see moving. And inventory does continue to tick upwards. So it'll be interesting to see. Summer is not generally a heavy listing month where new listings hit the market because everyone, most people are really taking that time away. Kids are off of school, they're going on vacations, whatever it might be. So generally listings slow down. But I'm going to really watch for that in July, August, and to see if we're going to see more of these investors placing even more units on the market. It's really going to dictate what's going to happen in September. So there you have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you did, hit the like button, because what that does is it takes the video and it sends it out to more people so they can learn from it as well. And if you enjoy this weekly real estate content, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss next week's video. And lastly, again, if you're in the Lower Mainland and you wanted to chat with me one-on-one about your real estate situation, you can book me for a free call in the Calendly link below, or just send me a text, give me a call, send me a message, whatever works for you. I'd be happy to chat with you. But I want to thank you for viewing this week's video, and I look forward to seeing you next week.